There we go. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for showing up. Axa, Tayane, Amanda, José Roberto, Vitor e Tiago Barbosa. I'm trying to kill a mosquito around here. Be careful not to get dengue or something like this. Boa noite, pessoal. The Behavioral Economics of Global Affairs. We are just about to start our 7th week of classes, so we are kind of the middle of the course, right? Está chegando mais ou menos na metade do curso. And it makes sense, right? Because, oh yeah, Amanda is saying this is not dengue mosquito, right? Because it works only in the afternoon or by the end of the afternoon. É, mas que tem aqui um danado de um mosquitinho tentando me picar, tem. So, let me go back. Yes, we are just about to get to the middle of the course. 7th week, a 7ª semana, metade do curso. And that makes sense because I'm just about to release the 4th list of exercises, which, by the way, will end up constituting the first VA, the first grade. Então, assim que vocês tiverem feito a 4ª lista de exercícios, aí vocês vão ter a nota da primeira VA já, né? Porque a gente vai tirar as 3 melhores notas, tirar a média e aquilo vai ser a nota da sua VA, da primeira VA. All right, then. Let me see. Amanda is saying here, what is this? Is a picture? Yeah, I think it is. All right. Primeira VA. Yeah, we are gonna be by that time in a few days. Okay, everybody. So let me go back and trying to get to you the context of what we are doing here. All right. So this is the behavior economics of global affairs, which means we want to study behavior economics, but we want to apply that knowledge in big issues of our time. Ok? Então, a gente quer estudar a economia comportamental, mas a gente quer sempre tentar aplicar esse conhecimento em grandes questões do nosso tempo. All right, so that's the plan. That's what we're going to do tonight again. We have started with the kind of individual approach, right? We started talking about individual behavior, cognitive biases. We talked about nudge. And we also discussed the prospect theory. All of those were focused on how people individually make their choices, right? Então, a gente começou falando de questões individuais, comportamentos individuais, como que as pessoas individualmente fazem as suas decisões. E agora, a gente está falando da parte organizacional. So, in last week, we talked about the garbage can theory of organizational behavior. A gente falou sobre a teoria lata de lixo de comportamento organizacional. So what we discussed there is that people, well, they are not as rational as many times we think. And when they are in the context of an organization, be that a company or a university of some sort of non-governmental organization or something like this. Well, in all those cases, people bring into the organization their humanity, you know, the way they make decisions, the way they change their opinions sometimes. And that we will have to pay attention to that if you want to make an organization effective, right? All right, so now we're going to move to the other 2 items that you have right in front of you. Let me expand this picture for you. So, by the way, we are using this set of class notes. Those are already available to you in our WhatsApp group. I sent the class notes to you in a few minutes ago. But those class notes will also be available in our SIGA A, the page that you have academic management, right? Aquela página lá de gestão acadêmica da universidade, lá também vai estar disponível essas fichas de aula, tá certo? All right, so at this point we are talking about organizational behavior, and we have already ticked the first item. We have already discussed the garbage can organization, or the garbage can theory of organizational behavior, which is also known as, so we can use this expression here, also known as, which means também conhecida como anarquia organizada, organized anarchy, okay? All right, so now we may choose which one we're gonna go tonight. Are we gonna be talking about sustainable business and how they come about, what they do, how people relate to sustainable business, what is the big deal with the emergence of this new sort of business model, okay? And we can also choose to discuss something more controversial, hotter topic, which is unethical decision-making in organizations. I'm more inclined to start with those, but let me check on you. O que vocês preferem, pessoal? Vamos começar falando de coisas quentes, tópicos controversos, polêmicos, como comportamento antiético nas organizações? Ou vamos começar com uma coisa mais light, falando de como é lindo se todos os negócios fossem sustentáveis? Let me see what you get here. Vitor foi comigo, também está querendo começar com a polêmica. Deixa eu ver quem mais que vai escrever aqui no chat. All right. Amanda also. Tiago. All right. So it's unanimous. Let's start with the unethical decision making in organizations. All right. Good choice. Okay, guys. So let's start with some funny things, okay? I'm going to get this. Descartar. I'm going to get this address here. I'm going to present you to a little story. I'm going to present you a little story. So let me stop sharing this screen with you. Just a second. And I'm going to show you something else, okay? We're going to watch a short video. I'm going to put the subtitles for you in English, okay? And you guys will tell me how well you can understand that, okay? So let me share here the new screen with you. Just a second. Ok. Tem que matar essa danada dessa muriçoca, senão não vai me deixar em paz a noite inteira. Okay, all right. I found it here. All right. Now, please confirm to me that you can listen to the sound. I will go back and start over, but just confirm to me if the sound is coming clear to you, okay? Let's see if that is working.
The Emperor's New Clothes by Hans Christian Andersen.
All right, let me check. Can you guys listen to it well? Tá dando para ouvir, né? Okay. There we go. I'm going to go back there and restart the video. Here it is. Okay.
The Emperor's New Clothes by Hans Christian Andersen. Once upon a time, there lived an emperor whose only interest was to dress elegantly. He changed clothes all the time, and he loved showing them to the citizens of the kingdom. The vanity of the emperor was well known in the kingdom and beyond. Two criminals had heard about the emperor's passion for clothes, and they decided to take advantage of it. They traveled to the castle of the emperor and introduced themselves at the gate. "We are two excellent tailors, and we have invented an extraordinary method to weave a cloth so light and so fine that it looks invisible. It is, however, only invisible to those who are too stupid and incompetent to appreciate the quality of our wonderful work." Knowing about the passion of the emperor for clothes, the guard led the two presumed tailors to the chief of the guards. The chief of the guards sent for the chamberlain of the court, and the chamberlain finally notified the prime minister. The prime minister ran to the emperor to tell him about these amazing tailors. The emperor got curious, and he decided to see the two tailors. "This cloth, Your Highness, will be woven in colors and patterns created especially for you," the two tailors told him. The emperor gave them a bag of gold coins and ordered them to immediately start working on the fabric. The two criminals asked for a loom and for silk, gold thread and silver. The emperor was excited. Besides getting a new wonderful suit, he would be able to find out who among his citizens was stupid and incompetent. After a few days, getting impatient, he sent his old and wise prime minister to the tailors in order to get a report on the progress of the work. This prime minister was known throughout the kingdom to be a man of common sense. "Go and see how the work is progressing," the emperor told him, "and come back to me." The two tailors welcomed the prime minister. They did as if they were working on the fabric, cutting the air with scissors and sewing the invisible cloth with their needles. "We have almost finished our work, but we need some more silk and some more gold thread. Here, Excellency, look at the colors, feel the softness of the cloth." The old man bent over the loom and tried to see the fabric, but there was nothing. He felt cold sweat on his forehead. "I can't see anything," he thought. "If I see nothing, that means I'm incompetent. Nobody should know this, otherwise I will lose my office." "What a wonderful work," he said after a short hesitation. "I will tell the emperor about the great work that you are doing." And the two tailors were very happy. They had almost made it. The emperor decided to send another important counselor to evaluate the quality of the two tailors' work. Upon his arrival in the workshop, this poor counselor had the same problem as the old prime minister. He couldn't see anything. "Isn't this a wonderful fabric?" the two crooks asked him, pointing at their imaginary work. "I am stupid," the counselor thought. "This is very strange, but nobody should know this." So he praised the work of the two crooks, went back to the emperor and reported on the fine progress of the work. Finally, the emperor received the announcement that the two tailors had finished their work and that his new suit was ready. The two tailors went to the emperor, moving forward slowly and bowed, pretending to hold the fabric. "Here it is, Your Highness," the tailor said. "We have worked day and night to produce this beautiful fabric for you. Look at the colors, feel the softness." Of course, the emperor could not see or feel anything, and he panicked. "I can't see it," he thought. "This means I'm stupid, or worse, incompetent as an emperor." But he soon realized that nobody could see that he could not see the fabric, and he calmed down. The two tailors invited the emperor to take off his clothes and to try the new ones. Then they held up a mirror. The emperor felt very embarrassed, but since none of his bystanders seemed to be equally uncomfortable, he felt relieved. "This is marvelous. This is beautiful. How good it looks on me," the emperor said, trying to look comfortable. "You've done a wonderful job." "Your Majesty," the prime minister said, "the people has heard about this wonderful fabric and they want to see you in your new suit." The emperor was not sure whether this would be a good idea to show himself to the people like this, but he could not say no. After all, only the stupid and incompetent would see him naked. "All right," he said, "I will grant the people this privilege." He gathered the dignitaries of the court around him, and they formed a ceremonial parade. Then the emperor walked in a procession through the main streets. Many people had gathered along the street, pushing and shoving to get a better look. A big applause welcomed the procession. All the citizens were curious to find out how stupid and incompetent their neighbors were. But when the emperor passed, a strange murmur rose from the crowd. first whispering from one citizen to the next, then in a loud choir, "Look at the emperor's new clothes. They are so beautiful. What a marvelous procession. And the colors, these wonderful colors. We have never seen such elegant clothes in our life." Of course, they were all disappointed of seeing nothing, but they did not dare to admit their stupidity and incompetence. They all behaved as the two scoundrels had predicted. A little boy, however, who was standing in the crowd with his father, suddenly said, "But he's wearing no clothes. The emperor is naked." His father grabbed the boy. "Fool!" he angrily shouted at him. "Shut up and don't speak nonsense." But some people in the crowd had heard the boy's remark, and they realized that he was right. "The boy is right. The emperor is naked. It's true." They repeated over and over again, first whispering, then louder and louder. The emperor realized that the people were right, but could not really admit it. He thought that the best he could do was to keep up the illusion and to continue the procession. He walked on while a page kept holding the imaginary mantle behind him.
All right, guys. Let me go back here and check on you. What did you get from this story? Vamos lá, gente. Quem é que pode me ajudar a entender o que viram nessa história aqui? Primeiro que se trata de uma fábula, né? Uma fábula até relativamente famosa. Levanta a mão aí se alguém já tinha ouvido falar dessa fábula, A Roupa Nova do Imperador. Ninguém? Okay. Now, I want someone to explain to me what is this about. Please tell me what you understood from the story. Quem que poderia fazer um resuminho aí bem rapidinho da história? Pode fazer por microfone, pelo chat, em português, em inglês, em alemão, espanhol. Quem é que poderia explicar para nós o que aconteceu nessa história? Let's see. Como é que a história começa? Vamos dizer assim. Estava muito difícil de entender. Pessoal, vou imaginar que vocês não entenderam nada, então eu vou colocar o vídeo para tocar de novo com a legenda em português. Que tal? Levanta a mão aí se você quer que eu toque o vídeo agora com legendas em português. Hello, preciso que alguém se manifeste. O Vitor não entendeu o começo da história. All right, so what we're going to do is this. I'm going to play the video again. The sound, the audio will still be in English, but the subtitles will be in Portuguese, ok? Vamos assistir o vídeo a segunda vez agora, mais uma vez com o som em inglês, mas as legendas vão aparecer em português agora, tá certo? All right, so let's go there. One more time. It's here. No, it's here. There we go. Let's go back to the beginning. And let's change the subtitles to Portuguese. Portuguese, 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 Portuguese. Tem espanhol aqui, não estou vendo português não, peraí. Espanhol, francês, Netherlands. Jurava que tinha português aqui. Não vai ter que ser espanhol mesmo. Azubskaya, Indonésia, Deutsch, espanhol, francês, italiano, Netherlands, Polski. Vai ter que ser em espanhol a legenda. Já ajuda um pouquinho mais, né? Ok. Let's try that.
The Emperor's New Clothes by Hans Christian Andersen. Once upon a time, there lived an emperor whose only interest was to dress elegantly. He changed clothes all the time, and he loved showing them to the citizens of the kingdom. The vanity of the emperor was well known in the kingdom and beyond. Two criminals had heard about the emperor's passion for clothes, and they decided to take advantage of it. They traveled to the castle of the emperor and introduced themselves at the gate. We are two excellent tailors, and we have invented an extraordinary method to weave a cloth so light and so fine that it looks invisible. It is, however, only invisible to those who are too stupid and incompetent to appreciate the quality of our wonderful work. Knowing about the passion of the emperor for clothes, the guard led the two presumed tailors to the chief of the guards. The chief of the guards sent for the chamberlain of the court, and the chamberlain finally notified the prime minister. The prime minister ran to the emperor to tell him about these amazing tailors. The emperor got curious, and he decided to see the two tailors. This cloth, Your Highness, will be woven in colors and patterns created especially for you, the two tailors told him. The emperor gave them a bag of gold coins and ordered them to immediately start working on the fabric. The two criminals asked for a loom and for silk, gold thread and silver. The emperor was excited. Besides getting a new wonderful suit, he would be able to find out who among his citizens was stupid and incompetent. After a few days, getting impatient, he sent his old and wise prime minister to the tailors in order to get a report on the progress of the work. This prime minister was known throughout the kingdom to be a man of common sense. Go and see how the work is progressing, the emperor told him, and come back to me. The two tailors welcomed the prime minister. They did as if they were working on the fabric, cutting the air with scissors and sewing the invisible cloth with their needles. We have almost finished our work, but we need some more silk and some more gold thread. Here, Excellency, look at the colors, feel the softness of the cloth. The old man bent over the loom and tried to see the fabric, but there was nothing. He felt cold sweat on his forehead. I can't see anything, he thought. If I see nothing, that means I'm incompetent. Nobody should know this, otherwise I will lose my office. What a wonderful work, he said after a short hesitation. I will tell the emperor about the great work that you are doing. And the two tailors were very happy. They had almost made it. The emperor decided to send another important counselor to evaluate the quality of the two tailors' work. Upon his arrival in the workshop, this poor counselor had the same problem as the old prime minister. He couldn't see anything. Isn't this a wonderful fabric? The two crooks asked him, pointing at their imaginary work. I am stupid, the counselor thought. This is very strange, but nobody should know this. So he praised the work of the two crooks, went back to the emperor and reported on the fine progress of the work. Finally, the emperor received the announcement that the two tailors had finished their work and that his new suit was ready. The two tailors went to the emperor, moving forward slowly and bowed, pretending to hold the fabric. Here it is, Your Highness, the tailor said. We have worked day and night to produce this beautiful fabric for you. Look at the colors, feel the softness. Of course, the emperor could not see or feel anything, and he panicked. I can't see it, he thought. This means I'm stupid, or worse, incompetent as an emperor. But he soon realized that nobody could see that he could not see the fabric, and he calmed down. The two tailors invited the emperor to take off his clothes and to try the new ones. Then they held up a mirror. The emperor felt very embarrassed, but since none of his bystanders seemed to be equally uncomfortable, he felt relieved. This is marvelous. This is beautiful. How good it looks on me, the emperor said, trying to look comfortable. You've done a wonderful job. Your Majesty, the prime minister said. The people has heard about this wonderful fabric and they want to see you in your new suit. The emperor was not sure whether this would be a good idea to show himself to the people like this, but he could not say no. After all, only the stupid and incompetent would see him naked. All right, he said, I will grant the people this privilege. He gathered the dignitaries of the court around him, and they formed a ceremonial parade. Then the emperor walked in a procession through the main streets. Many people had gathered along the street, pushing and shoving to get a better look. A big applause welcomed the procession. All the citizens were curious to find out how stupid and incompetent the neighbors were. But when the emperor passed, a strange murmur rose from the crowd, first whispering from one citizen to the next, then in a loud choir. Look at the emperor's new clothes. They are so beautiful. What a marvelous procession. And the colors, these wonderful colors. We have never seen such elegant clothes in our life. Of course, they were all disappointed of seeing nothing, but they did not dare to admit their stupidity and incompetence. They all behaved as the two scoundrels had predicted. A little boy, however, who was standing in the crowd with his father, suddenly said, "But he's wearing no clothes. The emperor is naked." His father grabbed the boy. "Fool!" he angrily shouted at him. "Shut up and don't speak nonsense." But some people in the crowd had heard the boy's remark, and they realized that he was right. The boy is right. The emperor is naked, it's true. They repeated over and over again, first whispering, then louder and louder. The emperor realized that the people were right, but could not really admit it. He thought that the best he could do was to keep up the illusion and to continue the procession. He walked on while a page kept holding the imaginary mantle behind him.
All right. Now you guys can tell me, what did you guys understand out of it? O que vocês entenderam dessa história, pessoal? Me conte aí. Quero ouvir alguém. Às vezes as pessoas preferem acreditar na ilusão do que na verdade que está estampada na sua cara. Well, yeah, that could be a lesson out of it. But I want you guys to tell me the story. Eu queria que alguém me contasse a história. Rapidamente. Às vezes as pessoas preferem acreditar na ilusão do que na verdade que está estampada na sua cara. Vamos lá, gente, por favor, preciso da ajuda de vocês. Geralmente as pessoas têm medo de questionar os fatos por medo de alguma represália e preferem seguir o coletivo e aceitarem o que é imposto. Aí a Amanda falou assim, talvez tenha a ver com a vaidade que pode levar as pessoas a não enxergarem as coisas. All right, good. So I'm going to make this kind of summary of the story, okay? First, there was this emperor, someone who has a lot of authority, okay? Então tinha um cara lá que é o imperador, manda em todo mundo, pode decidir quem vai morrer, quem vai viver. Tem poder. Then, below him, you have a structure, you have hierarchy, right? Tem uma hierarquia de conselheiros, empregados, funcionários, soldados e tal. Essa estrutura de poder. Aí vem dois safados, em espanhol, sinvergüenzas. Esses dois sem vergonha vão lá e falam assim, aquele rei é muito vaidoso, nós vamos aplicar um golpe nesse rei. Nós vamos falar com eles que nós somos costureiros, e que a gente prepara um traje tão incrível, tão maravilhoso, tão bonito, que só as pessoas inteligentes e muito sensíveis conseguem ver. Os outros todos revelam a sua estupidez porque não conseguem ver o traje. Juliana, comenta aí, por favor. Pode falar. Estou vendo sua mãozinha levantada. Pode falar, Juliana.
Professor, faz um bom tempo que eu tento entrar na aula e não consigo. Graças a Deus consegui agora.
Pois é, mas não estava aparecendo aqui o seu pedido não, que pena. Teve mais alguém com esse problema?
A internet está muito complicada aqui. Mas graças a Deus consegui, viu? Boa noite.
Tá certo. Que bom. Bem-vinda.
Obrigada.
Ó, tem gente mais ainda chegando agora. Pode fechar seu microfone agora para não vazar o áudio e não ficar voltando. Tá, pessoal, então tinha esse rei muito vaidoso, os dois criminosos resolveram se dar bem em cima deles, falaram que eram costureiros, alfaiates, que iam preparar uma roupa muito sofisticada, e a roupa era tão bonita que só as pessoas competentes e inteligentes eram capazes de ver a roupa. Os outros, ao olhar para a roupa, não veriam nada se forem burros, incompetentes, estúpidos e tudo mais. E aí eles pedem um monte de dinheiro, um monte de fio de ouro, de seda, para preparar aquele traje tão especial. O rei manda os conselheiros ir lá conferirem se está tudo indo bem e tal. Chega lá, os conselheiros não veem nada e ficam com medo de revelar a sua estupidez, a sua incompetência, dizendo que não estão vendo. Então eles vão e confirmam que estão vendo e falam para o rei que está tudo bem. 2 conselheiros fazem isso. Aí eles voltam, falam com o rei que está tudo bem. O rei mesmo, quando vai receber a entrega do traje finalmente, ele também não está vendo, mas ele tem medo de revelar para a sua própria corte, seus conselheiros, todo mundo está ali, que ele é incompetente. Então ele fala, não, está lindo, maravilhoso, vou vestir. Só que aí alguém tem a má ideia de falar assim, seu rei, o povo quer te ver, um traje tão especial e tal. E ele fala, tudo bem. Vai lá, faz uma procissão. No início, todo mundo sabendo do negócio, fica falando, poxa, ninguém tem coragem de dizer que o rei está pelado, mas fala, olha, tá muito bonito e tal, porque também ninguém queria se revelar estúpido ou incompetente. Até que vem uma criança que não tem, né? Ela é autêntica, ela tem a honestidade ali e fala, eita, peraí, olha lá, o rei está nu. A criança, por ser autêntica, não tem medo de expor o óbvio, mas como todos têm receio de serem ridicularizados e punidos, preferem o comodismo e não indagam as anomalias e incoerências presentes na vestimenta do rei. All right, so you got the story now. So let me ask you this. This is a fable, right? Something that was written hundreds of years ago. Do you think that this story has anything to do with lives nowadays in companies, in a corporate environment? Vocês acham que essa história, escrita há centenas de anos atrás, tem alguma coisa a ver com o que acontece hoje numa grande empresa ou numa corporação? Amanda says, yes. Victor agrees. Com certeza, professor. All right, guys. I brought this message here, I brought this story here, because it is unbelievably true today. É inacreditavelmente aplicada ao que existe hoje no mundo. A maioria das pessoas, em qualquer reunião que você faça dentro de um ambiente de trabalho, a maioria das pessoas tem um enorme medo de discordar. O Fabiano está dizendo aqui, acontece inclusive em sala de aula. Exactly. Sometimes the teachers will say things that we don't really believe, but we are afraid to say so. Muitas vezes também tem a figura de autoridade entre professor e aluno. O professor fala uma bobagem lá, a gente desconfia que aquilo é bobagem, mas a gente tem medo de se revelar, de falar alguma coisa e depois ser exposto, ou até de ter uma reação agressiva por parte do professor. Same thing happened with the king, the emperor, right? A mesma coisa pode acontecer com o imperador também. So, you know, this story, it's very, very rich in terms of parallels that you can make with true events and environments of today. Então, tem um enorme conjunto de paralelos que você consegue fazer com os eventos e com as circunstâncias de um ambiente corporativo hoje. Now, you may look at me and say, okay, Luis, I got this point, but what exactly we are talking about here? Well, in general terms, I'm talking about conformity. In English, we use this word here, conformity. Conformidade. Às vezes, se você questiona, pode ser mal visto. Então, muitos preferem ficar calados e apenas concordar com tudo. Exactly, Amanda. Yeah, it happens all the time. And you know what? We don't want to do things different from anyone else. It is something that is kind of ingrained in our brains. We feel very, very uncomfortable if everyone is doing something and we are doing something else. É muito difícil para cada um de nós. A nossa mente está programada para pensar assim. Se todo mundo está fazendo de um jeito, a gente fica com um enorme desconforto e dificuldade de fazer de uma maneira diferente. A gente quer fazer igual. Essa é uma das forças mais poderosas da psique humana, da psicologia humana. We have to pay attention to this, you know? If you know that, maybe you can be more realistic about your own thoughts, you know, and sometimes you can even sustain some originality. Se você entende que nós temos essa tendência cognitiva, todos nós temos essa tendência a pensar conforme, a pensar do jeito que os outros pensam e se sentir desconfortável se estiver fazendo coisas diferentes que as outras pessoas estão fazendo, conhecer esse fato pode nos permitir um grau de independência maior, um grau de liberdade própria, né, autorizada, falando assim, não, eu vou tentar, eu sei que existe essa tendência de pensar igual, mas eu vou me provocar aqui. Eu vou fazer o papel do advogado do diabo. Quem não ouviu essa? Olha essa expressão, gente. Devil's advocate. Tem em inglês também, advogado do diabo. Olha como que a gente carrega o peso, a condenação de uma pessoa que está pensando de forma desconforme. Olha, usar essa expressão. Olha, dá licença, eu preciso fazer o papel do advogado do diabo. Agora, para e pensa. Advogado do diabo. Sabe o que é isso? É a pessoa que está pensando independentemente, que está fazendo contra, está saindo fora da caixa e tentando criticar. Então, existe mesmo uma pressão para a gente agir igual, pensar igual e fazer o que todo mundo está fazendo. O Vitor escreveu aqui, ó, geralmente quem não faz o que o coletivo segue sofre esse certo preconceito pela maioria. Eu já passei por essa situação em que falei algo contrário do que a maioria pensa e acabei sendo mal visto. Passei por isso, professor. Já fui o advogado do diabo. Yes, you know, but you know what? I'm going to tell you a story. One of the most important executives in the world, or maybe at least in the automotive world, um dos executivos mais importantes da história do automobilismo. Não, acho que não era do automobilismo, não, era de produtos eletroeletrônicos. Não, tem automobilismo também, GM, All right, whatever. So one of these most important executives in the world, there's this story about him that once he had to make a decision about a specific project. So he invited all the members of the board, you know, the directors, to take a look at the project and check if they agree with him that was a good project, okay? Então, o cara entregou o projeto para todos os membros da diretoria e falou, eu quero que vocês leem, quero que vocês avaliem aí, porque eu estou pensando em executar esse projeto, mas eu quero saber a opinião de vocês. All right, so he set up a meeting, and when they got together, every single board member said, yes, go, this is a good project. Cara, na hora que chegou na reunião, todos os membros da diretoria dele concordaram que aquele era um bom negócio. You know what he did? He said, well, go back to work. I don't pay you to agree with me. We are going to set up another meeting, and when we come back here, I want to hear different ideas. I want you guys to check on my ideas. If they are okay, all right, you can confirm. But please check every single thing that I am thinking. Imagina um diretor que manda de volta os diretores, o presidente que manda de volta os diretores, falando assim, volta para o trabalho de vocês e vai fazer direito o trabalho. Porque eu não estou pagando vocês para concordarem comigo. Eu estou pagando vocês para checarem, para conferirem o que eu penso. A Tayana está falando aqui, ó, se agir diferente, a pessoa é julgada. Mas tem situações que não dá para seguir o coletivo. Oh, yeah, but it's hard to make that call, right? É difícil saber em qual é a situação é essa, né, Tayane? O Fabiano está falando aqui, aí a situação muda. Uma vez que é solicitada a opinião, omissão torna-se um pecado capital. Yeah, right, Fabiano, but check this. This executive, he was a genius. He was very smart. He realized that in order to make better decisions, he needed people to disagree with him. É muito raro um líder tão inteligente como esse para falar assim, se eu quiser acertar mais, eu preciso ter gente de confiança minha que questiona as minhas ideias. Vão me impedir de cometer erros. So this is a very smart leader, right? A different leader. Most of the leaders, they try to, establish consensus. É muito mais confortável para um líder estabelecer consenso. Para não todo mundo concorda, então bora. But this leader says, I think consensus is dangerous. O consenso é perigoso. Quem que nunca ouviu aquela expressão? Toda unanimidade é burra. All right, so now, why I'm bringing this thing here? I'm not just making like parallels, like, examples distant from reality. We are here tonight to try and understand one simple thing. Why do good people make huge mistakes and go on with things that they disagree? Por que pessoas boas dentro de uma organização se calam quando estão vendo alguma coisa errada acontecer? Now things are getting closer to what we want to reach, right? We are finally getting to the subject. What we are trying to talk here is about ethics and ethical behavior. O ponto realmente que a gente está tentando chegar aqui é falar assim, como é que pode um escândalo corporativo acontecer e você falar assim, será que ninguém sabia? Ninguém daquela organização sabia? Então pega assim, um desastre igual o desastre de Sobradinho, né? Aquela barragem da Vale do Rio Doce, matou aquele monte de gente, destruiu uma parte gigante da cidade. Aí você fala assim, pois é, não, teve um laudo falso, um laudo fraudulento que foi emitido para aquilo. And then you have to ask yourself, come on, nobody knew? Será que realmente ninguém sabia do que estava acontecendo? Será que não existe gente boa, honesta, que se calou diante do que estava acontecendo, com medo das consequências? Now, Amanda is saying here, tem que ter coragem para expor o que pensa. Yeah, that's true. But if you have to be if you have to be confident in order to expose what you think, that means that the environment is not so friendly. All right, so we want to talk about that. We want to talk about strong contexts. Contexts that are stronger than reason. Contextos que acabam moldando o comportamento das pessoas. Mesmo uma pessoa... Gente, olha só, não vamos nos iludir aqui, tá? Claro que existe gente ruim nesse mundo. Mas o que a gente está falando é que, muitas vezes, grandes escândalos corporativos não são explicados só pela safadeza. Tem lá 1, 2 ou 5 pessoas safadas e tem um monte de gente calada. Um monte de gente que teme falar o que está acontecendo. A Fabiana está dizendo aqui, aí não sobre o que se pensa, entendo que prevalece o ditado, manda quem pode, obedece quem tem boleto para pagar. Yeah, it happens, Fabiano. Sometimes, yes, we are afraid of losing our jobs, and then we just shut up. And we go along with terrible things. Então, grandes escândalos corporativos, gente, não são causados apenas pela desonestidade, pela crueldade ou pela ganância. Grandes escândalos corporativos também são causados pela omissão, pelo silêncio, pela pressão que um determinado contexto pode impor sobre as pessoas. And there are many ways these things can be established, okay? All right, so let me share here with you my class notes, because most of the things we have to talk about, we have already mentioned them, but we want to go a little bit more careful about some of these things, okay? All right, you got here the link. If you want to watch this video again, it's available, okay? You can click here in the class notes, and you can watch the story again, okay? Now, notice that this fable was published in 1837. So it's like almost 200 years old. But it's not outdated. Embora seja escrito há quase 200 anos atrás, não é ultrapassada. Now, the aspects that helps explaining the story, well, we have initially talked here, right? We are talking about strong context. We are talking about pressure. We are talking about power. We are talking about fear, medo. Now, from an organization standpoint, what we can see is like people are working in hierarchy. Não tem hierarquias, tem níveis de poder. Uma pessoa não pode discordar do seu chefe, que não pode discordar do seu outro chefe. All right, so this sounds like a bad recipe, a recipe for disaster, okay? So let me bring out some of the things that we have to remember here and compare the emperor's new clothes with today, okay? With today's organizations. Então, vou trazer aqui alguns elementos e a gente vai mostrando como que eles estão presentes, tanto lá na história de 200 anos atrás, quanto no dia a dia de hoje das empresas, tá? So, the first one here is saying like this: excessive trust on routines. Uma confiança excessiva nas rotinas, nos protocolos. Group pressure, pressão dos pares, pressão do grupo. Embarrassment, quer dizer aqui, como é que fala isso em português? Constrangimento, embarrassment. Arrogance, arrogância. Ego or vanity, vaidade, ego. Social disapproval of stupidity and incompetence. As pessoas que são incompetentes, elas têm vergonha da sua incompetência. Now, there are some other things here. This expression is very, very important, guys. Take a look at this, okay? Narrow framing. Enquadramento estreito. Narrow framing. Enquadramento estreito. What is this? Well, it's a limited perception of the world, misleading interpretation of facts. Now, suppose that you work for an industry, a factory, and this factory produces bombs, okay? To be used in a war. To be very clear here, okay? Suponha que você trabalha numa fábrica e essa fábrica produz bombas. Ah, qual que é a sua função nessa fábrica? Não, o que eu faço é atender o telefone. And then some people may look at you and say, come on, don't you feel uncomfortable for working in a factory that produces bombs and causes so much suffering in the world? Você pode perguntar para uma pessoa, vem cá, você não tem vergonha de trabalhar numa fábrica que produz bombas e que acaba causando tanto sofrimento no planeta? Aí a pessoa fala assim, não, a minha parte lá é só atender o telefone. Eu não faço bomba, não. Aham. So, he actually contributes to the organization, but he feels like it's not his responsibility. Now, notice that every single person working for this organization can say the same thing. Oh, no. I'm not actually producing the bomb. I'm just assembling some parts. No. I'm not actually producing the bomb. I'm just checking on someone else's work. Então, cada um tem só um pedacinho da tarefa. Todo mundo pode falar assim, não sou eu, não. E até o dono da fábrica fala assim, não, eu estou produzindo a bomba, torcendo para que ela não seja usada. Porque se a gente tiver a bomba aqui, os nossos inimigos não vão invadir, a gente nem vai ter guerra. You see? So each of us can tell himself or herself a story about how our responsibility is very specific. And we are not responsible for the whole thing, okay? The name of this thing is narrow framing. Eu estou só fazendo a minha parte. O que eles estão fazendo com essa bomba não tem nada com isso. So that thing happens a lot in most of the companies. We don't actually take responsibility if we feel that we are only responsible for a small part of a very complicated, a very damaging process. Minha função aqui é só afiar a faca. Se alguém vai pegar essa faca e meter no bucho do outro, eu não tenho nada com isso. So we always have ways to describe our responsibility as being small and specific, so that we don't feel like we participate in the tragedies. We also have fear of other people's judgment. A gente tem medo da avaliação, do julgamento das pessoas. We have to deal with strong contexts. What, again, are strong contexts? Contexts can be stronger than reason. Às vezes, os contextos podem ser mais fortes, mais poderosos que a própria razão, o juízo, pensamento humano. We also have to pay attention to poor leaderships. Infelizmente, nós temos líderes muito fracos, muito autoritários. E nós temos que lidar com o problema de pessoas que são realmente desonestas. There are people out there who actually try all the time to take advantage of all of those things. Então, tem gente safada que sabe de tudo isso que eu acabei de escrever aqui e fala assim, já que aquilo ali existe, eu vou me dar bem. All right. So you guys can see that we are not talking actually about something that is interesting for 200 years ago. We're talking about today, okay? Now, I can't finish this class without doing two things. I want to tell you guys the story of Ford Pinto. It's a car, by the way. The name is strange. And I want to talk a little bit about these three concepts here, okay? The first one, it's a more controversial one. Think about this, the term ethical blindness. Quem é que pode traduzir para mim ethical blindness? Como é que eu falaria isso em português? Ethical blindness. How would you translate that? Pode digitar aqui no chat para mim, pessoal. How would you translate that? Ethical blindness. What is blindness? Aham, o Tiago nos ajudou aqui, ó. Cegueira ética. Exactly. Cegueira ética. Uma incapacidade temporária de observar aspectos éticos de uma decisão. Now, the description is exactly what we have here. A temporary inability to see the ethical aspects of a decision, many times due to strong contexts. Muitas vezes por consequência de contextos fortes. All right, so how can we be sure that we are talking about ethical blindness? Okay, we have 3 characteristics of ethical blindness. First, people tend to deviate from their own values. Se a gente estiver tratando de uma cegueira ética, a gente está vendo pessoas se comportando de uma maneira que não é típica delas, se desviando do que elas fariam na maior parte das vezes. The second point is context bounded. É um comportamento restrito àquele contexto. Quando ela está naquele contexto, ela age daquela forma. And third characteristic, it is unconscious, which means people don't even realize that they are doing it. Okay? Então, para a gente ter esse termo, cegueira ética, a gente tem que falar essas 3 coisas. Primeiro, que a pessoa parece estar se comportando de uma maneira que não é típica dela. Segundo, ela se comporta daquela maneira no contexto específico e não em todas as outras ocasiões. E terceiro, é inconsciente. Ela não percebe que ela está agindo assim. Alright, so, I mean, this is interesting stuff. And I'm going to go back, okay? I'm going to tell you about this guy who actually said, look, much later, after a scandal, people asked him, and he told, well, you can believe me or not, but the truth is I couldn't see what I was doing. The guy actually said that. Olha, vocês podem acreditar em mim ou não, depois de um escândalo ter sido descoberto. Ele falou, vocês podem acreditar em mim ou não, mas quando eu estava fazendo o que eu fiz, eu não consegui perceber a gravidade em termos éticos, morais, do que eu estava fazendo. Eu não conseguia ver. Você pode achar que eu estou mentindo, mas cuidado, porque outras pessoas vão fazer a mesma coisa que eu, porque a gente não vê. All right. The second one we have already talked a little bit about, strong context, contextos fortes. Então, aqui a gente está falando de contextos que acabam se superpondo à razão, ao juízo, aos valores, às boas intenções. They can be completely irrational if you look from outside, but they do seem very reasonable and normal from inside. Então, eles podem parecer absurdos para quem está olhando de fora, mas para quem está lá dentro, eles parecem naturais, e nem se dá conta que eles estão ali. All right, there are 3 types of strong contexts. Situational context, então, contextos situacionais, passageiros, coisas que acontecem, sei lá, no final do mês, a empresa está naquela correria para fechar o balanço, para fechar as vendas, aí pode fazer coisa e falar, não, agora não dá tempo, depois a gente conversa. Então, o contexto pode ser situacional, né, passageiro. Pode ser organizacional, organizational context. Então, a gente está falando de como a organização se estabelece, como que ela divide as tarefas, para que nenhum dos trabalhadores entenda exatamente o que está acontecendo. And it can be institutional. Aqui, gente, é quando já está entranhado nas pessoas, quando já está na cultura das pessoas agir de uma determinada forma. Então, tem a ver aí com questões sociais, vivências, e as pessoas acabam fazendo aquilo achando que está natural. All right. Finally, just to finish those concepts here, we talked about narrow framing, right? O enquadramento estreito, a ideia de que você acaba não vendo aspectos éticos de uma questão se você enxergá-la sobre um ângulo bem fechadinho, assim, não, nisso aqui não há nada de errado com isso aqui, mas na hora que eu abro, opa, peraí, tá tudo errado. All right, these three things are present in this example that I'm going to tell you very quickly before we finish this class, okay? By the way, I'm not going to talk about these social biases tonight. We're going to go back to those later, okay? But let me tell you the story of Ford Pinto. All right, so Ford Pinto is the name of this car here that you can see. Now, in Brazil, we had kind of a version of this car. It was not exactly the same, but it looked like it. E no Brasil, a gente chamava esse carro de Corcel. Muitos anos atrás, se você perguntar para os pais de vocês ou para o avô de vocês, tinha um carro aqui da Ford no Brasil que chamava Corcel. All right, so this Ford Pinto, and by the way, Pinto in English doesn't have the same meaning that we do here. Pinto in English is just a small chicken. No Brasil não dava para vender um carro com esse nome, né? Ford Pinto. All right. But then this car had one very tragic characteristic. When you had some sort of collisions from the back, the fuel tank would explode in fire. Então, havia um defeito no desenho, no design desse carro, que quando ele sofria colisões traseiras de determinado tipo, o carro explodia em chamas. All right. Notice that in this case, most of the people look at this case and they think it is about, cold-hearted, cruel people. Quando as pessoas leem e estudam esse caso, a tendência é elas falarem assim, tá vendo? O ser humano não presta. O ser humano é ganancioso, ele faz tudo pelo lucro, e ele quer matar o outro se for preciso para ganhar mais dinheiro. All right, so some of it is true, but what we want to show here is that sometimes these things are not only the consequence of maximization or profit seeking or greed. Às vezes esses escândalos, essas tragédias não são o resultado apenas da ganância, da crueldade, da busca pelo lucro. So let's try and understand this, okay? First of all, the engineers got together and they calculated how costly it would be to fix the car. So they said, okay, let's see how much we would have to spend to fix the problem so that the car will never explode, even with collisions like this and that, okay? And they calculated how much that would cost. But then they made another calculation. They said, how much do we have to pay when the explosions happen? They may look and say, what? Yeah. They actually calculated that. Quanto que os juízes, as cortes, os tribunais obrigam a Ford a pagar quando um carro explode em chamas? $200 mil. Ok, so how often this thing happens? Com que frequência que essa tragédia acontece? 10 times a year. Ok, 10 times 200,000, that's going to be 2 million. Então eles falaram assim, o que é mais barato? Consertar o carro ou ficar pagando a indenização? Now, you may look at this and say, come on, Luis, this is crazy. These guys are... How can they make this calculation? People's lives are in danger here. People die because of these explosions. How can you make these calculations? Então, quando a gente fala assim, calcular o custo da vida humana, o custo de consertar o problema do automóvel, parece ser um exemplo de crueldade, desumanidade, né? All right, but take it easy. You have to understand a little bit more of what was going on, okay? So even though they made these calculations, well, the production of the car kept going on for several months. They didn't stop the production of the car. This guy here, who was like one of the most important executives of the company at that time, he told people that he could not see the ethical aspects of it. Ele falou depois assim, gente, eu não conseguia ver. All right, so let's try and understand why these guys couldn't see, okay? All right. First of all, there was this huge pressure to keep the car cheap. Nessa época, gente, estavam chegando milhares, centenas de milhares de automóveis japoneses para concorrer com os americanos. E os carros japoneses eram muito mais baratos. Eles fizeram uma pesquisa de mercado e falaram assim, o nosso carro não pode custar mais que $2.000. Se a gente cobrar mais que $2.000 no nosso carro, nós não vamos vender um. Os japoneses vão vender tudinho aqui. So there was this pressure, all right? The same thing, well, when you have the Japanese coming, now you have the Chinese coming, these guys thought, well, it's us versus them. É nós contra eles. A ideia de que você está sob ataque de um adversário e que você tem que fazer tudo que for possível para ganhar, ajuda a explicar. Now, one more aspect of this thing, we are talking about the 70s. Nos anos 70, gente, não era nem obrigado a fazer teste de colisão antes de vender um veículo. Esses testes só passaram a ser obrigatórios 7 anos depois desse caso. People really didn't think about safety. Naquela época, as pessoas não davam tanta importância à segurança do veículo. Quando acontecia um acidente, alguém morria, as pessoas não botavam a culpa no automóvel, botavam a culpa na pessoa, no motorista. Ninguém questionava se o automóvel tinha gerado o problema. Falava assim, não, o motorista bateu forte demais, alguma coisa. And, by the way, this explosion, it was perceived as a low probability risk. Então, era entendida como sendo um risco muito, muito baixo. Now, the little berry at the top of the cake here, it goes like this. Esse carro da Ford, Pinto, was the only small car that Ford had to compete against the Japanese. Não tinha plano B. Eles tinham que lidar com ele. Era esse o carro. Well, now when you see all these elements together, you kind of understand why these people say that they couldn't see, all right? You may believe or not that they realize how terrible a thing they were doing, but you can understand how the pressure, you know, and the ideology, us versus them, the fear of losing the market. So all of this helps us explaining. And by the way, when Ford Pinto was not produced anymore, 500 people had died. 500 people had died because of this thing. So it kept going for longer and longer months. All right, let me stop here and check if you guys have any questions about this story. Alguém gostaria de fazer alguma pergunta, algum comentário sobre essa história? This is a true case, guys. You can search for it in the internet, and you're going to see many, many discussions about this case, okay? If you go to YouTube or something like this, and you type in Ford Pinto scandal or something like this, you're going to see lots and lots of material about this. This is one of the most infamous scandals of all time. And it is discussed in many classes. Por que nós estamos discutindo isso aqui? Well, we are talking here about behavior economics. We have to understand people's behavior. And sometimes we tend to simplify it. Muitas vezes a gente tenta simplificar a interpretação das questões. Ganância? Existe. Busca insana pelo lucro? Existe. But those things don't explain why so many people shut up. Ganância e busca pelo lucro não explicam porque tanta gente boa se cala quando poderia ter evitado essas desgraças, essas tragédias. So, we have to be more realistic about human behavior, especially when we're talking about organizational behavior, okay? Now, you guys leave this class with some concepts in your minds that can make a huge difference in your careers, okay? A partir do que vocês discutiram nessa aula aqui, vocês estão saindo com conceitos na cabeça de vocês que podem fazer uma diferença gigante na carreira de vocês. Então, se a gente quer fazer um país melhor, se a gente quer fazer um mundo melhor, a gente tem que começar entendendo o comportamento humano. E aí não é eles, não é aquele, somos nós, tá? Nós todos estamos sujeitos a esse tipo de problema, de estarmos cegos temporariamente, sermos conduzidos por um contexto forte, encontrarmos enquadramento bem estreitinho para aquilo que a gente está fazendo, de modo que a gente não se culpe. And that is very important knowledge. All right. Questions? O Fabiano Carvalho está fazendo aqui uma concordância comigo, está falando assim, não é tão simples essa explicação da busca pelo lucro. Uma série de fatores colaboram para a tomada de decisão. That's a very good point, Fabiano. Yes, we have to pay attention to that. We shouldn't simplify the interpretation of human behavior. All right. Okay, guys, I'm going to stop recording here, and I'm going to be here for a few more minutes if you want to talk to me.